Just checking.
Everybody else seemed to be good. Do you want to go ahead and just give a quick, test, mic check, test one? Each person we start.
Test.
Robert.
We're good?
Test.
Testing.
Very good.
Test.
Very good. Good? Yeah,
We're good? Okay. Oh, one thing I was going to say is I said good morning. Let's not say that because we don't know how, let's not date it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned
Okay.
Friday.
Okay.
So we'll
want to make it last a
Yep,
while,
don't-
a long shelf life, so
yeah, so,
welcome.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll try to, gotta remember that. I remembered that after we started, so.
So see, it's a good thing that there's a
Yeah, take two. So let us know when we're ready.
We're ready. I'm
Ready?
rolling, Waldo.
okay. 3, 2, 1.
Hi, my name is Raudel Garza. I'm the CEO for Harlingen Economic Development Corporation, and I wanted to welcome you to the Choose Harlingen video series that we're putting on. Today we're going to be talking to folks about getting a business started in Harlingen and what it takes to actually open up the doors for your business. So with me today, I have the pleasure of introducing Robert Gomez. Robert is the official
Chief building official for the
key
city.
building official for the city of Harlingen. And then I have also Beverly Loftus, who works with me at the Harlingen Economic Development Corporation. Beverly is the commercial development manager. And Javier Cervantes, who's the director of planning for the city of Harlingen as well. So welcome everybody. Like I said before, it's been a really pleasure talking to you all about the things that you all do. We're gonna start by just talking about the building and the permitting process, the subdivision process in general. For example, let's say that I have a piece of property and I wanted to open up a building so that I can open up my retail store. What's the process involved in that? Let's assume that my property is kind of on the outskirts, but just a few years ago was annexed into the city. What are we going to be looking at?
Well, the first thing we look at is the zoning, right? Do you have the proper zoning for the proposed business? And we have different categories for commercial zoning. So depending on the type of business that is pursued, there's different zoning categories for that business. So hopefully the property is in a commercial corridor that will make it easier to get that zoning. Sometimes it may be near a commercial corridor where we can try to get that zoning for the owner. And then the other thing we look at is the property properly subdivided. The subdivision is what we do is we make sure it has the proper infrastructure. That's the whole purpose of subdividing.
So by infrastructure, we're talking water, sewer,
streets and
electricity,
drainage, yeah.
sidewalks?
Yeah, that's sometimes the property already has the sidewalks. If not, sidewalks will be required either during the subdivision process or during the building permit process.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then after we have the zoning and we have a platted property, what's next after that?
The next step is to submit the construction plans.
Okay.
And that's where Robert comes in. He distributes the plans to the different departments because engineering gets involved, Harlingen Water Works gets involved, fire department. So the plans get routed, and within a week or two, we give them comments. Hopefully, all the plans were done properly, and we can approve the plans within a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So we can issue the building permit fairly quickly.
When somebody comes in with a set of plans for a piece of property that's already been platted, assuming that it's already been subdivided, what's the process in your office?
We typically see the most common scenario is there's an existing building that comes in for, let's say, like the retail example. When the retail building comes, or the customer comes in for that retail space, if it's an existing space that he just wants to reoccupy or she wants to reoccupy, then what we do is we schedule them for a reoccupancy inspection. That's the most common scenario we see. Sometimes we get people who want to reoccupy restaurants. They want to reoccupy same use that was there before. Then we just get them scheduled for that reoccupancy inspection. There are times where they want to come in and they want to remodel the space, the retail space or the restaurant. And in a case like that, then there's some documents that the applicant will need to submit in order to apply for that building permit that would be needed. Whether it might be tearing down walls or adding additional square footage to the space, we typically ask for the application, the site plan, the floor plan. Depending on the size of the building, there might be additional documents. Possibly engineering may be required. But yes, once the complete set of documents are submitted, we'll review them. We'll send them to like Javier had mentioned, we'll send them to the several different departments, and each department will get us their comments, and we'll let the applicant know if it's ready to issue, or there might be some additional information that might be needed.
So if it's a brand new building, then they have to have complete set of construction documents, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
in those, they have something from an architect or a draftsperson, or how does it?
Yeah, so when
typically
it comes
form?
to new construction, there's requirements whenever the building is, depending on the size of the building. So if the building is over a certain square footage, then it would require the engineer to get involved, and that would be the structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering. Also, depending on the square footage, then a registered architect would need to get involved. But that pertains to new construction, and it really comes down to the size of the building. The rule of thumb for engineering is the 5,000 square feet
Okay.
number. For architectural, it's over 20,000 square feet.
So any building that's 5,000 square feet or larger, it's going to need an engineer to stamp the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing drawings.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
got that.
Yeah. When it comes to the structural part, because we're in Harlingen where the wind loads are high, then the structural would always come into play whenever it comes to new construction.
But that's residential or commercial.
That's
it doesn't
correct.
matter. That is just a given in here in
Yes, sir.
Harlingen and Cameron County, period, for the most part, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right. So, all right, so we got it all going, but we forgot something. Because a lot of people will ask us, well, what does the Economic Development Corporation do? Well, aside from Beverly acting as a liaison from time to time for the customer and trying to help them go through that process that we're talking about, we also offer incentives sometimes. Sometimes. Beverly, can you talk about what we do and why we do it
Yeah.
and what the timing needs to be?
Yeah, so as Rodell mentioned, sometimes we incentivize businesses to choose Harlingen, and that incentive usually requires completing a project review form, and most incentives are incentivizing capital investment, job creation, and the I can't remember the last one. Sorry. Okay,
Just go
let me
ahead.
restart.
Yeah.
Hold on. Okay. So as Rodell mentioned, we do often incentivize businesses to choose Harlingen, and sometimes those incentives are based on job creation, the capital investment generated, and then of course the sales tax that's being created from that business. And so what we do usually ask is we bring businesses in, we talk a little bit about the project, what are they doing, what kind of jobs are they creating. We ask them to complete a project review form. That really will give us a good idea of what the project's about, which then allows us to go and talk about it within the staff, and then be able to present it to our board. And so that's kind of the process when a business is looking for an incentive. And then from there, really depending on what that project is, we can take it further.
So if you've already made up your mind to come to Harlingen, guess what? It's too late. So you need to actually apply for these incentives before you buy the property, before you actually make up your mind to build in Harlingen, because once you've done that, you've already crossed that line that we can't go back on. So
Yeah.
really, the incentives are for those people who are trying to start a business and aren't sure whether Harlingen is the right spot or not.
Right.
And so we will help you decide by going through that process, and then hopefully bring you back into Harlingen so that you can choose Harlingen.
Yes.
So that's very important.
Yes.
And so we get involved very early in the process when people are still trying to figure out whether or not they should even do that business or locate that business in Harlingen or somewhere else. And whether it's an industrial deal or a commercial deal, that's the same thing for us. For y'all, the process is pretty basic as well, whether it's a small deal or a large deal. Let's talk a little bit about industrial and warehousing, for example. A lot of times we have some folks who are doing a delivery service, for example. Right now, that's a popular thing. Logistics is popular. And there's some existing buildings out there that they occupy. If there's some empty buildings, what are they going to go through in terms of permitting to make sure that they can actually occupy that space?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they have to comply with the building codes, right? Sometimes we have warehouses that have been there for many years, and there's a new owner or a potential new owner to change to a new business. It involves complying with the building code. So sometimes, there could be some requirements.
Maybe some upgrades that might come into play depending on the age of the building. Also, if it was used, if the use is not the same to what is being proposed, then that would require the applicant to go through, the customer to go through a permit process. And depending on the use, there might be some upgrades that may need to be done. If it's the same use and the building there's no repairs that are needed, then it's just a matter of doing the reoccupancy inspection.
Okay.
And we can definitely help anyone who walks through our door with that.
How long does that process take?
That reoccupancy inspection can be done within 1 day to the next.
Okay.
They can come to our office, fill out the application, and we can get them scheduled for that. There is a fee that we do charge for that, and once we get that application, we can get them scheduled from 1 day to the next. The inspection consists of not just the building permits and inspections department. There's other departments that get involved, depending on the use. Planning department, engineering department, our waterworks department, and fire department also gets involved on that occupancy inspection. And when they go to the site, it's just verifying that it's maintained, and if there are some items that need to be corrected, then we'll advise the applicant.
I hear a lot of people sometimes say, well, now they're asking me for a sprinkler system. When does that come into play?
Yeah, so the sprinkler system comes down to the use again. There are cases where it used to be a retail space, and retail spaces have different fire sprinkler requirements, typically when it's over a certain square footage, and for retail it's typically 12,000 square feet, and that's when it comes into play. But we do get applicants that come in and they find a retail space that's 6,000 square feet, and
okay.
well, it's not sprinklered, right? But when they come to our office, they want to do a restaurant. So because of that change of use, now we would review it as the assembly type use, which is a restaurant. And because of that change, a restaurant requires a sprinkler system when it's over 5,000 square feet. So in a case like this, it's something that we would let the customer know that because of this change in use, that sprinkler system would be needed.
Okay.
A lot of times we give options to developers. Like
Okay.
we had the warehouse developer, and he didn't want to do the sprinklers. So
that's correct.
there's ways around. They do the design a certain way with blocks dividing the spaces.
Yeah,
There's ways to get
there's
around.
several options. I
So
mean,
they can build what they call firewalls?
Well, there's options that we would consider, and obviously advise our customers that there's options. But yes, firewalls or fire barriers, those are options that may benefit the applicant, depending on the use.
Right.
But yes,
Okay.
sir, there are plenty of options out there. And whenever we have a customer that needs help with that fire sprinkler system, we do give them those options and see which one works best for them. The way the code views occupancies is, okay, well, if you don't see installing this, then you may just need to do this. So it's like a give and take type of review on those buildings.
Yeah. So what's the most common, I guess, request from people that are trying to open up business? Is it more, we're trying to occupy an existing space, or more of the new construction? What do you see more?
There's I would say I'd say half and half, but
Okay.
the reoccupancy, I would say, is what we see come into the office, because it's quicker, right?
Sure.
If there's an existing space with the same use, then our customers typically want to start operating and earning money, right? But occasionally there are those that want to remodel, and some that want new construction or new locations. But the new locations we've seen also are existing business owners who are expanding. So they already have their business in place, but they're looking to expand, to grow. So then now they're looking at doing their own building.
So most people are always thinking about time, and time is money.
That's
and
correct.
So if they want to open their doors sooner rather than later, how soon do they need to get the city involved?
Well, I mean, you want to visit us as quickly as possible if you're contemplating purchasing a property, right? Sometimes people purchase properties thinking they can do all this business, but the location is not appropriate for the business. So always pay us a visit first before purchasing. And then after you purchase, we can set up meetings with them, with the contractors, with the engineers. We're always available for meetings with the committee to guide them through the process.
Yeah. And so if it's a commercial project and Beverly's kind of walking them through that process, usually you'll be at the meetings with them, right?
Yes.
Beverly?
So they keep talking about meeting with different departments. So one of the really great things that the city does is that before you even purchase the property, you can set up a meeting, and sometimes that's set up through me or one of these other individuals, and that's a developers meeting. And so at that meeting, you've got potentially all the different department heads, so fire, planning and zoning, building official, and you can ask all of those questions at one time of what's required, what kind of zone is it? Do I need to re-subdivide? Can I put this type of use, business use in this space? And so that's a really great meeting to kind of just initiate those conversations. And then, sometimes they'll contact me and be like, we submitted that replat and I haven't heard anything. It's been a week, and so, sometimes it's just reassuring them, they usually have about 14 days to submit some comments. And other times it's picking up the phone, calling Javier or calling Robert and just saying, hey, what's the status of this? And, we work really well together to make sure that businesses have what they need and they're getting the answers they need to successfully do business in Harlingen and start a business in Harlingen.
So the permitting process for a new construction on a platted property is how many days?
I would say if everything's submitted properly and everything gets approved, and it can be as quick as 14 days.
14 days,
14
okay.
days, 15 days.
Now, if a property is not subdivided, that's a little different story, right?
Yeah, because the infrastructure, if the infrastructure is there, the subdivision process can go fairly quickly. But if there's challenges with the water, with the sewer, with the drainage, then the subdivision could take longer.
And you still have to get the county involved as well.
Not only if it's in the ETJ. If it's
Okay.
inside the city, only with the city.
So within the city limits, the city of Harlingen handles everything with
Correct.
waterworks and all the other departments. But if it's outside the city limits, but within our ETJ, by the way, is extraterritorial jurisdiction, which is areas of the city that will soon be or someday be part of the city.
Correct.
So if it's outside the city limits but within the ETJ, what's the process?
Well, we only do subdivision process. We don't regulate the zonings.
Okay.
But they can request annexation, and so during the subdivision process, we could do the voluntary annexation, and that way, for the building permit, they only deal with the city of Harlingen, which will be easier and faster.
Okay.
So some developers.
But we're still talking about some time for unplatted property, right? I mean,
Yeah, like I said, depending on the infrastructure, it could be done, in a few months if the
Okay.
infrastructure is in place.
Yeah.
If not, then it could take a little longer because a water line needs to be extended, or sewer line needs to be extended, or drainage improvements.
And again, those are the points we're trying to make, is make sure that people get us involved early enough to where we
Correct.
can help them guide that process and hopefully speed up their permitting process as well.
Correct.
Yeah, there are other entities like TxDOT, if you're on a property that has, TxDOT roads, you do have to comply with some of their rules. And that's great, again, is that those developer meetings or calling me or calling one of these individuals is, being able to identify, hey, what other entities need to come to the table to make sure that we're getting all the right pieces to make this happen.
So Robert, what's the typical day look like for you, and how many people come into your office?
Yeah,
Tell me a little bit about that.
Currently, we see I've been seeing residential and commercial walk in the door. Business owners who want to open existing businesses or have questions about what they need to do in order to open a business, or they want a new construction, do a new house. But the typical day is, I start the day, walk into the office and see what I need to take care of, and usually I have somebody walk in the door at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we're there to help them. So from about 8 to about 5, just helping those customers that walk in the door. There's several customers that we see, and we do help all those customers with whatever building or permitting question they have.
So what kind of construction requires a permit? I mean, I want to build a new fence because my fence was blown down during the last storm. Is that
Well, when it comes to
something that-
fences, there are exemptions for that, and if it's 7 feet or less, then no permit would be, or less than 7 feet, then no permit would be required in a case like that. We do advise, whenever we get those questions, we do advise the customer, just make sure it's in your property, right? But once it goes above the 7 feet, then yes, a building permit would be required for that fence.
What if I want to change the layout of my building, the inside? I've got some walls and I want to knock down some walls. Do I need a permit for that?
Yes, sir. So that's where a building permit would be required. Alteration like that would require submitting some documents, the new floor plan, the existing floor plan of what's being proposed. And one of the biggest items that people are not aware of is the asbestos survey. The state of Texas requires that an asbestos survey be conducted whenever there's materials being removed from a building. That's an item that can get the applicant in trouble if it's not done. It can get the city in trouble. So we do advise our customers that that's something that we need before we can issue a building permit.
So asbestos surveys are required for any kind of demolition, removal of construction materials or anything like that
Yes, sir.
from an existing building?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Whenever there's any material removed from an existing building, that needs to happen. There really isn't a grandfathering when it comes to asbestos survey. It's something that just comes into play.
But for the most part, most of our general contractors in this area know about this, right?
That's correct. Yes. So majority that walk into our office will have an asbestos survey with them, or
Okay.
we'll have that done and we'll submit it shortly. But we do have those applicants that are not aware of it, and could take some time and could cost some money. So we do advise them up front if it's not in their document, in their packet that's submitted for the application.
What are some of the problems that you see sometimes from people who are trying to subdivide property, whether it's for residential or commercial, right at the very beginning? What do they not do that they should be doing?
Well, I mean, a big factor is hiring an engineer, right? Some engineers are faster than others, so I think that's a big decision to make, is hiring the correct engineer for your project. So you do your homework on that, because that could speed your project or slow down your project. So that's a big one.
So civil
Checking the references, checking with friends or that have gone through the process on what engineer to hire for the process.
So hiring a civil engineer to subdivide property and to make sure it goes through the process properly is very important, and should be
Correct.
one of the first things you do for properties that are how big? I mean, does it matter if I have a 1 acre or 5 acres
No.
or 10 acres?
It doesn't matter. The rule was the property split the way it is before 1978? If not, then you're required to go through the subdivision process, because that's when the subdivision ordinance was adopted. And the purpose of that is to make sure that the property has the proper infrastructure for the commercial project. You have the water, sewer, fire protection, the drainage, so that there will not be any issues in those regards for your project.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, well, thank you so much. How are we on time? How are we doing?
Variances, grease traps, and then
Okay, so looking back over
Sure.
here, because they're going to have to cut somewhere. So one of the other things that sometimes we hear is that somebody says, well, I can't do what I want to do on my property, but is there another way to do it? And some people have said, well, there's a variance. Can I get a variance? What's a variance?
The variance is an exception to the ordinance. So sometimes there are special circumstances that that could help proceed the project. If a variance is granted based on special, there's supposed to be there's something unique about the property that a variance could be pursued.
So if I have a piece of property and a building there that was used before for, let's assume it was a store, but I want to put a restaurant in it and I want to serve alcohol. Now we're starting to talk about and there's residential close by. Now we're starting to talk about some issues that may have some problems, right? Is that where the variance comes in, or a conditional use permit?
The variances, we have variances for subdivisions.
Okay.
So we just processed one recently for a proposed commercial plaza that the subdivision ordinance required so many feet of right-of-way dedication. The developer asked for a reduction on that. And so based on the circumstances, the city commission granted that variance request. You also have variance requests to the zoning ordinance, but that's typically setbacks.
Okay.
And those are more residential. And those go before the zoning board of adjustments. There's a public hearing, and we notify the property owners within 200 feet. Now, in the case that you mentioned, it could be a bar that wants to sell alcohol. That requires a special use permit, which is different from a variance. It's just like a special permit granted by the city commission that can be withdrawn. So let's say somebody wants to set up a bar in a commercial plaza, but there's a neighborhood behind it, and so they get the special use permit, but then we have a lot of problems after the bar opens with noise and fighting and things like that. Then we could process a withdrawal of the special use permit. So it's kind of like a conditional. Okay, if you have a good business and the neighbors are not being negatively impacted, you can continue it.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, another question we get from time to time is, hey, I want to occupy this certain space and I want to serve some food, and I want to turn some of that into a kitchen and restaurant. What are some of the things that they need to watch out for?
When a customer wants to propose a restaurant or some type of food establishment, there's equipment in the kitchen that needs to be in place because of the sanitation and how clean it has to be. Stainless steel is typically what the equipment is, so that needs to be installed. There might be, depending on the cooking, there might be a hood system that may need to be installed, so that's something the customer needs to consider. And along with that, there's also a grease trap. I know customers sometimes only consider what goes into the kitchen, but there's also a grease trap that's outside of the building that would need to be installed also, and that's required and sized by our waterworks department. We do get them involved in the review process whenever it comes to restaurants. There's some cost that's associated with that, so we ask customers to look into it and see what it is that they want to do in the kitchen, because depending on what they want to do, it could change the size of that grease trap.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Robert.
Yes, sir.
So we've been talking a lot about what happens at City Hall when somebody wants to open up a business, but there's a lot of other things that we need to do before we open up a business, and people have to think about, like Beverly said, in our project review form, we ask people for things other than just filling out an application for incentives. We ask them for a business plan. We ask them for some financials. Beverly, can you go a little bit more into that, and why do we do that, and why people should do that if they're opening up a business?
Sure. So, we have businesses contact us that are either filling out the project review form, or maybe they want to do business in Harlingen and they have an idea, but they don't have those other aspects like Rodel mentioned, such as a business plan, or maybe they don't have access to capital, or they need some type of financial statement. And what we'll do is we will either, guide them with what they need. or we'll connect them to community partners who are the industry experts in those fields to assist them with a business plan or to help them find access to capital or to be able to do the right marketing or those other aspects of business that sometimes we forget about.
So who's the community partners you're talking about?
So community partners, definitely the Chamber's a great partner, the Small Business Administration, the Small Business Development Center out of UTRGV. There's also the UTRGV Entrepreneurship Center out of Brownsville that is really great with helping out with business plans and financial documents. We also have every year the Harlingen Economic Development Corporation sponsors the Kauffman Fast Track program, and that's a program all about starting a business.
We actually do that twice a year.
Yeah, twice a year. So it is a applicant process where you are selected amongst many applicants, and it's a great time to learn about does your business have the right right use? Is it gonna be profitable? Is it? Do you have a business plan? Are you looking at all the other aspects it takes to start a business? In addition to everything that we've talked about today, there's other things like that that have to come into play.
Yeah, so if you're trying to open up a business, you're thinking about opening up a business, then please contact us at the EDC or contact the city in case you're looking at occupying a specific space or buying a piece of property and we're not sure whether or not it's going to be a compatible use for your particular business. That's what we're all about.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I want to thank Javier, Beverly, and Robert for joining us and helping you to decide to choose Harlingen. We're out.
That was beautiful.